Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Health Wealth podcast. We've got another exciting episode for you this week. This week, we have a very special guest. So, I am joined by Zakariya Frank from beatcancer.org, and we're going to be talking about cancer this week and getting deep into it. Um, Feeding off his expertise, we're going to learn a lot of things about cancer and get into what it is, what causes it, how you treat it, and the things you can do. So, first off, Zakariya, welcome to the show, and how are you doing today?
Doing fantastic, my friend. Doing fantastic. How are you doing?
Awesome to hear. Yes, I'm good. Thank you. I'm doing good, as always. So it's good to hear. So I think first off, I'll let you give us the background yourself on what it is you do, what it is the company does, and sort of how you got into that.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we begin, I'll just offer a minor correction. And I don't claim to be an expert. I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy that's interested in health, and I've learned a thing or two along the way. And I've now partnered with this organization that also has learned a thing or two along the way. And I myself don't claim to be an expert because I know a lot of people might get mad at that. So I'm just a guy, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I work with beatcancer.org. We're formerly known as the Center for Advancement in Cancer Education. We're a 46-year-old nonprofit in the holistic cancer education space. And our mission is that we believe that 90 or above 90% of cancers can be remedied through simple diet and lifestyle changes, right? Where we're all about empowering people and bringing health back to people's, you know, people's awareness, right? And making people know that, hey, the choices that you make in this life can determine your outcome. You're not just a victim to cancer, and you don't have to be at the mercy of conventional treatments because a lot of times people find themselves being taken advantage of or really run through the ringer of getting less and less healthy as they go that route. So we're all about educating people on what they can do and bringing them their power back.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's, we're about education as well. That's perfect. It's giving people that power, empowering them to be able to look after themselves. So did you have any personal health experience that kind of pushed you into this line of work and into cancer within your family or you personally? Was there anything that kind of brought you to it?
Yeah, so my family's had a lot of different cancers. My grandfather died with cancer. My grandmother on my other side also had different types of cancer. I mean, my family's very unhealthy in certain ways, especially as some of them age. But that could be said for most people, right? A lot of people, they ended up with diabetes, this cancer, that cancer. Myself, I haven't necessarily had specific instances of cancer or ailments that really push me towards the holistic side of things. My story is that it's kind of funny. After university, I was working in finance. So I was working in finance, and I was doing just some office stuff on a computer. And you know how it is. You corporate, you start your way up, you start your way at the bottom, work your way up. So you're just doing very basic menial tasks as you begin. And so I would do my job really fast and then have a lot of extra time. So I'd be on Instagram and just stumbled my way across some interesting information, right? And just fell down the rabbit hole of learning that a lot of things in this world aren't really as they seem. And as someone that had a brain always, I always kind of knew that, but I never really quite dove into just how crazy this world was, right? And a big part of it was health. And so I started learning all these different things about health and all these different ways in which we, the public, are getting really poisoned or damaged in all these different capacities. And once I started to learn, I couldn't just, ostrich and not make changes in my life. So I started making very rapid and radical changes in my own personal life and got to see my own personal health and wellness get exponentially better as time went on. And so, yeah, I've just been learning different things along the way that in different arenas as they come to me or as they're relevant. So, I've learned about my own health as a man. I've learned about females' health. I've learned about dogs' health. I've learned about just all these different interesting things because there's so much to learn. And I like to be a forever student. And so I've just been casually collecting information for my own self for probably about 5, 6 years now. And then as far as working in a professional capacity in this arena, I just happened to meet the CEO of this organization casually one time through networking, and we got to talking, and it was a good fit. So he offered for me to work with him, and I'm very grateful for that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think we always need to be learning. I think we always need to have that mindset, don't we? That there's always more to know, and having an open mind. And that's how a lot of people end up on, on this side of where we're at, where you've just, if you allow your mind to be open and to question, maybe everything isn't as we're told, you start to learn an awful lot very quickly, I find.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I don't know how deep you want to go. Of course, you get yourself in trouble on on social media saying too much. But yeah, there's a lot of entities out there that aren't in the general public's favor. So you gotta watch your own back.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree. So obviously you started working with this organization. Um, what are the ways that people come into contact with them? If someone's looking for help, what are the stages they'd find them online, and then what they'd get set up with a coach? How does it work?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways actually, because we've cast our net really wide, especially with our coaching certification program. So like I mentioned, we have our one in-house counselor. She's on staff. She's the only person who takes salary in the whole organization, and she's just on call. And anyone that can, get in contact with her via, you can find the phone number on our website or on our business cards, or of course you could always email us and we'll get you the phone number if for some reason you couldn't find it, and you call her and she'll work with you one on one. She'll develop a plan. She'll and it's everything's personalized, everything's specialized. There's no one size fits all element to holistic health treatment, right? uh, Conventional treatment treats it like that, though. Treats you like a statistic, treats you like just a formula, and bam, they'll make you fit no matter what. If you're a square peg, they'll shove you into their round hole if that's how they do things. But that's not how we do things. Everything's individualized and personalized. So our counselor will get all of the information from you regarding you, and then develop a plan, and then you can call her up as much as you need, once a week, twice a week, once a month, whatever you're comfortable with. And she'll be there as like an accountability coach or partner, and work with you to kind of adjust along the way as you progress. So I'd say you get in contact with her just through our official channels. But because we've trained hundreds of coaches all across the world, well, they all have their own unique ways to get in contact with them. We advertise for them, and we offer them the opportunity to create a profile on our website as well. So if you go to our website, beatcancer.org, and click find a coach, you could search through that directory through our hundreds of coaches all over the world with their own assorted specialties and views and modalities. But then, of course, they're running their own businesses. So they all have their own websites and their own ways that they advertise and prefer to be contacted. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome. And I think awesome to point out as well that, as you said, it's the organization you're working with, it is a non-profit organization as well. It's there to try and help people and run as a charity. So that's an important thing I think to be aware of, because people are always worried about snake oil salesmen and people just trying to take money and things like that. So it's great that it's free for people. If they need that help, it's there. So that's absolutely brilliant. Um, so let's dig a little bit more into cancer. What do you say? I mean, I know it's a wide number of things. It's not one, but what do you feel are the main things in this modern day lifestyle which are causing the increases of cancer that we're seeing?
Man, that's huge array of things, right? But we'll go down to the basics. One, there's physical poison. Because if you're adding physical poison into the body, well, that's a load on the body. And the body is very fantastic detoxification routes and pathways, but there's only so much toxic load that the body can take. And unfortunately, this modern world is very artificial in the way that it does mostly everything. So you really have to address mostly or entirely everything about your body and about your day-to-day life. For example, the obvious thing is food, right? What kind of food are you eating, or what kind of food-like products are you eating? Are you consuming things that are natural, or are you consuming things that are entirely synthetic? Are you consuming things that are, natural produce, but they're loaded with pesticides and chemicals in that way? Um, that's the obvious one. But then what's in your water? Are you drinking tap water full of assorted chemicals and metals, and we can go on and on with that. What are you cleaning your house with? Are you spraying toxic chemicals all over your house and then that's absorbing into your skin, and are you breathing it in? What are you wearing? Are you wearing synthetic plastic fibers and then that plastic's going into your body? What are you um what are you using on your underarms, right? Because especially in our sensitive areas such as armpits that are very absorbent, that you really want to be careful what you're putting there. It's so there's all avenues of consideration when it comes to physical poison, but then there's also emotional poison, right? Because we're emotional creatures, and our mind and our emotionality, it goes hand in hand with our physicality and our body. People aren't living right, and people aren't living well, and people aren't living in a way that satisfies and fulfills them, and a lot of people are living in a way that is just slowly killing them in different capacities, and that's very unfortunate, and that emotional load is a lot for the body to process as well. um, People keeping toxic relationships in their life, that will kill you, and that can turn your body toxic, and that can contribute to or play a factor in cancer. And that's something we talk about in our program. There's emotional correlates to different kinds of cancer. And this is very interesting. This is actually something I learned coming into the organization, because I knew, of course, that your level of stress and your level of wellness overall is going to play a role. But I didn't know the specific correlates to certain emotions and certain personality traits to specific types of cancer. For example, people who what is it? People who have trouble letting go of the past, people who have had one particular or a handful of negative things that happened in their past that they just harbor resentment over, and they just like can't get over it, and they think about it all the time, and they haven't forgiven the occurrence, and they feel like a victim. Well, those people often find themselves to develop colon cancer. There's a correlation there that has been found scientifically. Um, and I know someone that happened to, actually. I know someone in my family who was the poster person for not letting go of unfortunate events in the past, and they found out they wound up with colon cancer, which was wild. So when I realized that correlation and I showed them, that person, which happens a lot, they kind of took that occurrence and realized that they had to make a change in their life. So they kind of worked on themselves a little bit after that. But then I showed them, I was like, hey, look, you got this and you lived like that. And they're like, oh shit, you're right. And so that was interesting. But there's other ones too, like women who develop breast cancer very often will have had some sort of problem with their child, because the breast is a nurturing organ, and by nature is very involved with child rearing and child raising, etc. And I'm not a I'm not a scientist, so I'm just sharing information that anyone else can look into. And so there's been correlations found that women who've had trauma with their child, either the passing of a child or the illness of a child or an estranged relationship with a child, or the child's not doing well in some sort of way and they're really worried about them, well, those women will often develop breast cancer. And when I say it plays a part, well, you could say, oh, well, maybe they're doing other stuff that was gonna, make them have that cancer anyway. Yeah, maybe, absolutely. I'm not saying there's never necessarily one thing that you can say this caused that. I'm just saying that there's sometimes correlations that contribute, because our body is a machine that kind of there's emotional centers of the body, right? that there's energetic emotional centers of the body, and certain emotions and certain elements of our emotional health are tied to certain physical organs. That's been studied in a lot of different modalities. So there's a two-part answer to the question. It's how are we being physically poisoned, and how are we being emotionally poisoned? It's what are you eating and what's eating you is kind of what it
Yeah.
goes down to.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. No, I agree completely. It is. In fact, there's I looked into a case recently where the guy was he ate pretty healthy. He had a pretty healthy lifestyle, but he had a 6 month period. And I don't know exactly what the stress was, but really stressful 6 month period in his life. And he developed stage 4 colon cancer.
Yeah. And it's like,
Just
where
from
did
that.
that come from? I'm doing everything right, right? I'm
Mm.
doing all the I'm eating my greens, I'm taking my vitamins. And that really goes to show you it's more than that. It absolutely is essential that we're living in a fulfilled emotional manner as well. Because we've seen that in recurrence, right? There's one particular case study that our founder talked about where she was working with this woman who was a CEO of some company or a high level executive of some nature, and she loved her job. She loved it. She was a real boss. She was a killer. She was just really crushing at her job, and she enjoyed that. But she wasn't, and she didn't have a family, and she got cancer, and then she worked to remedy it and got rid of it, and then it kept coming back. And so she was making the diet changes, she was making the other lifestyle changes that would remove the physical poison, but the cancer kept coming back. And she's okay, well, what more can I do? And through the emotional work, the therapeutic work, they determined and realized that she had to leave her job because it was just killing her. It was stressing her out. She just couldn't take it. And so she left that position. It was a very high paying position, and took a job as like a instructor at the local YMCA or something. And like was doing something super chill, major step down in lifestyle, but it wasn't eating her anymore. Her job wasn't eating her, and then she never got cancer again. So
Yeah.
there's so many individual and unique stories because everyone's life and sickness and health is very individual and unique, but it's certainly very interesting.
Yeah, it is. I agree. And I think we often forget about the mental side because it's a physical thing, the cancer. I think people get very bogged down with the physical side. And like you said, the physical side plays a part as well. But I think the mental side is a lot more powerful, as you say, than people let on and people admit. There's people, I know people, and I'm sure you do, that people have said, like, oh, well, my dad got cancer, so I'm going to get cancer, or my mum got cancer, and then they end up getting cancer. Like, what if they weren't thinking that the whole time? Would they have got cancer?
Yeah, that shit pisses me off, man. Because the genetics thing, it's a scam.
Yeah.
It's to put it aggressively, right? And let me clarify that because there's genetic factors, right? Because someone's unhealthy choices can damage their DNA, and then that person has a child. Well, now that person's can pass on damaged or semi-damaged DNA. And so the child may start from a damaged DNA starting point, but that doesn't mean that that person can't heal at a cellular level, heal at a DNA level through good choices. Now, hopefully, they live into adulthood and become a sovereign being, and their parents' unhealthy choices that damage them in the first place don't continue to damage them to the point of no return while they are a child under their care. But to say, oh, my parents had that, so I'm gonna get it, it's just garbage. And it's just like pull the hood over your eyes and no, don't look for a solution. Just take this pill for the rest of your life, just like your parent did. It's garbage, man. And we're at the friggin' point where I was out the other day and I saw this kid, he's a 19-year-old university student, and he's like, oh, I get headaches because my mom gets headaches. It's genetic. Bro, I lost my mind. I'm like, bro, what? Like that's how far they've taken it. I understand
Yeah.
if they'll convince people over terminal like crazy illnesses, oh, and these super conditions, but you're gonna say you have headaches because your mom gets headaches? Stop it, bro. Drink water. Come on.
Yeah.
How much did you sleep last night? Like, oh my god, it's
Yeah.
crazy. And it's just very unfortunate that they've top to bottom convinced people that nothing they do matters. Everything's random, or everything's genetic. So you're just gonna be along for the ride of whatever your genetics say. And our founder had a good way of putting it. It's genetics may have loaded the gun, but it's your lifestyle choices that will fire it or unload the gun.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great way to put it. You might be at a starting off disadvantage point, but you can still do the work and fix it.
Yeah.
What
Absolutely.
happened? Yeah, and that's why it's like when they say, oh, this runs in my family, that runs in my family. It's like, no, nobody runs in your family. That's why you're all fat and
That's
unhealthy, you know?
that's
Like,
what happens.
it's crazy. But on a more serious note, it's like, okay, if parents eat processed food and junk and don't exercise, their kids watch them doing that, well, then that's what they're gonna do as
Mm.
well. So choices run in families.
That's it. Yeah. It's the, as you say, it's the dietary choices, lifestyle choices, mindsets that run in the family. And then that leads to the conditions. As you said before, you made the point that it's never one thing that causes it. It's a number of things. So as you said, you could have a genetic disposition towards a certain thing, but that's one little thing. If you get everything else right, you're not going to end up with that.
Yeah,
It's like, go on.
sorry. And you made a fantastic point at the beginning of that segment where you said if you go about thinking that, well, then yeah, it's gonna come true because our minds are so powerful. And it's studied. This isn't wazy woozy stuff. It's studied scientifically with placebos, right? In studies, when people get placebo pills and they say that this is going to heal you, then those people do like will often get healed when the drug didn't do anything. It was nothingness. But then it also goes in the opposite direction. There's this one study where what was it? They had two groups and they gave someone like a milkshake, some sort of milkshake smoothie thing, and they told one group this is a protein smoothie with this antioxidants and this and that, whatever. They told the other group this is full of sugar and syrup, and this is a really sweet, really unhealthy sugary thing. And then they studied the like blood sugar and different metrics of both groups after they drank the smoothie. And the one who they told it was a super unhealthy sugary drink, even though it wasn't, it was a very neutral thing. They had elevated blood sugar and they had like these very unhealthy reactions. And so again, it's been studied scientifically. You can make yourself sick. You can absolutely make yourself sick. You could even make yourself die. And that's why a lot of people in the conventional cancer treatment route, they die right on time when their doctor has been saying. Their doctor say, "Oh, you will die April 5th." And now that person is thinking, "I'm going to die April 5th. I'm going to die April 5th. I'm going to die April 5th." And they're just programming that into their body and your body will follow suit to what your mind tells it to do.
Yeah.
And so at a certain point, it's like, okay, well, now my time's up, shut down, stop. Like it's unfortunate. It's really sad. It is really sad. But the beautiful side of it is that we can go in the opposite direction and with a positive attitude towards our health, and that comes from a place of empowerment. We can battle on and make ourselves persevere and heal.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree that there's been cases where people have been diagnosed with cancer and told they've got 3 months to live, and then they've died in 3 months' time. They've done an autopsy, and there's no cancer in their body.
Yeah, exactly. And then you get the doctors be, oh, I knew it. I was so right. I told you so, you know? Oh,
Yeah,
man.
but I agree with you that with the positive side is there as well. Like you said, it could kill you, it can make you sick, but also it can make you well if you get it right,
Yeah.
as well, and you have that positive mindset. I think you can achieve anything.
Yeah, that's important to note because it's very easy to be doom and gloom when you start to learn about these things and realize how crazy and unfavorable a lot of the ways that things work are. But we always have to look at the beautiful side because there's always an equal and opposite force and an equal and opposite reaction, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So let's just say someone comes to you who, let's say, either they have cancer or maybe they're worried about getting cancer and trying to prevent it. What are some of the basic, obviously I know everyone's different, every case is different, but what are some of the basic things people could start to change in their lifestyle that's going to help them to prevent getting to that point?
Yeah, so the basic things, right off the bat, is to eliminate clear poisons. So that goes back to the body products, the cleaning products, the try to get organic produce and any sort of foods. Eliminate artificial foods and sweeteners and stuff. Stop with the sugar
Yeah.
of all the different varieties, because sugar absolutely feeds cancer in all capacities. So that's the basics, right? Stop physically poisoning yourself in as many ways as you absolutely can. And then again, all things are very individual, so I can't just give a blanket prescription, but there's a couple things that we know, right? So to be very clear, my position and the organization's position is that we are not anti-meat and we're not anti-animal products. So we're not like fundamentalist vegans, vegetarians, etc. However, plants and vegetables and certain fruits in the right times and capacities are known to be very healing and detoxifying. So if someone has a specific cancer concern, perhaps it's a good idea to step away from some animal products for the time being and then focus on eating in certain ways with incorporating a lot of plants and a plant-based diet. And this is my personal viewpoint. This doesn't necessarily reflect the organization, but the way I see it is that animal products are like the building blocks, right? But if you have a foundation of sickness and you have a foundation of illness and you're unwell, well, you don't want to be building upon that unhealthy foundation, right? Because you'll be building in the wrong direction. You don't want to add strength to dysfunction. So if you have like an illness that you're concerned about, perhaps let your body chill out, because it does take some energy to process animal products as well, versus plants are sometimes a little more easily digestible. So perhaps step away from the animal products for some time and focus on some certain plants. And then you really got to do some internal healing work too, right? Because you got to get to the root of what any potential emotional crisis you might be having. And that doesn't necessarily mean there always is one, but it's always worth taking a look at. What's going on? What do you have going on around you, and what do you immerse yourself in, and what mental patterns are you holding that might be, to your own demise? That would be some of the basics to start to look at.
Yeah.
I consider.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the main issues that we have is that we're just not living as humans are meant to live, are we? Everything about our lifestyle now, the way we live is completely going against how humans are designed to live. And I think, as you say, that's just everything's poisoning us, whether it's down to the stress, even the eating, how often we eat, the foods we eat. We're not seeing the sun enough, we're not out, we're not moving enough, we're too sedentary. It's kind of it's all just it's all just mounts up, doesn't it, on top of each other, and we're living in a toxic environment.
Yeah. Oh, that's absolutely true. And that's absolutely true. And that's why it's so hard to give this person X that I know nothing about any sort of advice to begin with, because yeah, you need to think about everything that you might not necessarily be thinking about. And top to bottom, we're living in an artificial society. It's like backwards land. It's a complete upside down Stranger Things world, that everything's been inverted and everything's been, flipped upside down, and left is right and up is down and man is woman, and it's crazy, man. And plastic is food and plastic is clothes. And it's crazy. You gotta address everything, because I mean that's why you're sick, right? Because you're not living right.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's what we look at, is the different areas when people come to us and they need help. It's not just diet, it's diet, exercise, stress, sleep. Sleep's important. Sleep, bad sleep can really mess you up as well. So I think you have to look at all of these different things in order to really get to the bottom of it, and to get proper health. You have to have everything lined up. I think someone used an analogy when it was, I think they had like either three or four pillars you have, and think of it like a stool with like three or four legs. Like if you had a three-legged stool, if they're all three are there, you're fine. But if one goes, that stool's not staying up, it's coming down. And so
Yeah,
you got to keep everything in line, haven't you?
yeah, absolutely. And this is another fantastic reason why I like this organization, Beat Cancer, because this is a lot, right? when I started diving into all these topics, my head was spinning. I lost my mind for a second, and it's stressful. It's stressful to learn that everything I know is wrong, and everything that I'm doing is harming me, and all these things that I have in my house are harming me, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, and most of the options on the shelf are wrong and harming me. That's a lot. That's a heavy, heavy mental load as a realization, and let alone the research to now figure out what I can do as alternatives that are healthy. And someone that is facing cancer or facing an illness, well, they're already stretched thin, right? They're already stressed. They're already freaking out, possibly. They're already, um, have their minds spinning, and they're already often quite feeling alone and not knowing what to do and feeling lost and confused. And they have their being told this by their doctors and this by their family and this by their friends and this by the internet and this and that. And that's where a coach comes in, because a coach is that person that says, hey, I got you. We're going to get through this. I'm going to help you learn what you need to learn, and we're going to fix this. And that's why people really enjoy working with coaches, because all of a sudden they're not alone. They don't have to do the research all on their own. Of course, we encourage our people to learn and not just be, oh, I'll listen to my coach, blah, blah, blah. No, of course, figure things out for yourself too, and use your coach as a jumping off point and touch base. I always encourage self, empowerment and self research. But to have that person in that time of need is just huge. And there's testimony after testimony from people that I've worked with, not only a counselor, but our independent coaches. And that's what they all say. I was feeling alone. I was feeling confused. And this person got me to where I needed to be. Because that's why a lot of people end up going the conventional route, even if they know better. Even if someone knows that the conventional route, because everybody knows it's not good, like deep in their hearts, everybody knows it's wrong when you go to a hospital and you get brought through the ringer. Everybody, unless you're just completely brainless, everybody is at least a little suspicious of, oh, they're just in it for the profit or this, that, whatever. But if you don't know better and you don't necessarily have the mental capacity or fortitude or energy to give to figuring out a complete opposite route that you may have never looked into before, that's it's a big ask of someone. Not everyone's up to that, and understandably so when they're facing cancer. So a lot of people end up just going through the motions and going through the steps and going through the process of being sucked dry of their life and finances in the conventional route.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And it's like you said, although they know it's wrong, it's almost the easier way out, because at least then they've got a doctor, telling them, okay, we'll do this and this and this. And like you say, it's a lot to learn on your own. It's a lot to go through. So it is important to have a coach and someone who can educate you, because I'm sure you'll agree with me that once you have learned it, it's actually very simple what you
Yeah.
do. We're kind of the same thing, but on the other side to you. So we're like an animal based approach. Obviously, you guys are more plant based, but on both sides, it's just getting back to simplicity, like get rid of all the fake foods and get back to eating real food. And I think once you can, as you say, educate people and teach people that, it's actually very simple once you know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. And at an overarching level, it's very interesting, the animal based versus plant based thing, right? Because it is two sides of the same coin in a lot of ways. There's a lot of disparity between the two. My personal experience is I actually went entirely plant based for several years. And I was convinced at that time that animal products were not ideal and not good for people. And so I explored that route. And that was a lot of people's story. There was a big surgence of plant-based people in maybe, what was it, 4 or 5 years ago. It really blew up, right? And then I had the experience of, it was fantastic. I detoxed a lot of stuff out of me, and I could definitely tell that it was very good for me to do for a certain period of time for the stripping down purposes. And then after a good handful of years myself, I just found that no matter what combination of plant-based eating I was doing, it just felt like there was a bit missing. And so eventually I was like, okay. And then I just came across different outlooks and thought processes that I didn't changed my mind from thinking that, animal-based eating was inherently wrong or evil or whatever. So I was like, all right, let me try that out again and incorporate the animal products. And now I'm mostly an animal eater, honestly. um, but if I were to develop an illness, um, perhaps that would be different, right? And that's where our recommendations for healing or specifically preventing cancer aren't necessarily, hey, you should be doing this always, all the time, for the rest of your life, this and that. And you know what I'm saying? We're not dogmatic
Yeah.
in that way. We're not a one size fits all. Hey, this is good. We're just no, hey, we've studied that these plants are good for healing cancer. Try that out. Right. And something else I want to touch on, because we've given conventional medicine and conventional approaches a bad rap and a bad name, and I've said a lot of things that are against it. But our organization's official capacity and standing, we're not against conventional approaches, right? And we'll even work with people that are taking conventional approaches. That's fine. We don't discriminate. We don't say, hey, you have to join us in everything we say and recommend, or otherwise, get lost. We work with a lot of people, our counselor and our assorted coaches will work with people that want to go conventional or semi-conventional or conventional to a degree. And we'll work with them to mitigate their side effects.
Yeah.
Because the same methods and the same modalities that will help improve your life and improve your health and improve the quality of your living in a way that will battle cancer itself, well, those same things will also help alleviate your side effects from the chemo, from the radiation, et cetera, et cetera. Me personally, I don't recommend going conventional at all. But
Yeah.
Not everyone's willing to do that.
Yeah, that was a question I was actually going to ask you was what are your thoughts on the standard of care treatments, and do you work with people that are going through that? Because like you said, if they're gonna do the holistic stuff, it's still going to benefit them even if they're doing the standard of care treatments, the chemo, the radiation. And one of the things that really helps with that, I know, is fasting. Is that something you guys are big on with fasting?
Yeah, so fasting certainly is very beneficial in the right capacity, right? There's
Yeah.
times where your body definitely needs an intake of nutrients, and there's times where your body needs to chill out, not focus on, digesting food and not focus on spending energy to break down food and instead, look internally to, give tune-ups where needed. So yeah, we do talk about fasting in the right capacity. And when I say that we talk about, right, there's a lot of variance because we're not a cult, because we're not dogmatic, because we're not this is the one size fits all thing. I have one way that I think about certain things. Our counselor has her experience and her personal spin that she puts on things. Our coaches all have their own personal experiences and their personal thoughts. Like we have some coaches that might be more plant-based, and we have some coaches that might be a little more animal based. We have some coaches that might be a little more this, that, the other. Some might be for fasting, some might be anti-fasting. It's because we're not saying we are the rulers and what we say goes. There's a wide variety of opinions and thoughts and approaches throughout our coaches as an organization. So that there's someone for everyone in that way.
Yeah, I think that's important as well, because there's many ways to flog a horse, as they say, and there's more than one way to do these things and to heal from these conditions. There's I hear stories of people who've gone fully plant-based raw vegan and healed cancer, and I hear people who've gone to pure meat and healed cancer.
Yep.
So
Yes.
they've both healed cancer. So
yeah. Yep, absolutely, and that's it's an interesting thing, and that's why in my more mature years, I've learned that there's a lot more nuance to a lot of topics. Things aren't necessarily black and white, or they might be both black and white, and both those
yeah,
are good. Like so I try to never say never these days, and I try to never speak in absolutisms on things where it's not appropriate because yeah, I mean, you nailed it. There's people that'll say no meat, only plants. That's good for you, and that might be good for you right now. Maybe that won't even be good for you, that same person, a year from now. Maybe, you know what I mean? Maybe that won't
Yeah.
be good for someone who's exactly like you, but is different in this one way or whatever. And then so the other way is better for them. You know, there's a lot of ways to flog a horse, like you said. And so when people, my advocation is for open discussion, right? And that's why something that's a pet peeve of mine is when people try to just shut down conversations about different healing modalities because they disagree with it. Like you might disagree with it, but that doesn't mean it didn't work for all these people that it worked for, right? Are you just gonna ignore that because you don't like it? It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And then that's why open forum discussions are so essential.
Yeah, I agree. And very hard to come by nowadays, I think. I think everyone's getting more and more, you know, into their section and they refuse to even consider opinions from other places. Like open debate is quite hard to come by now, I think, in most things. And, you know, especially in the medical and the health world, you have these people saying, oh, if it's not in a research paper, it's not a study, then it doesn't mean anything. But you know, research papers and studies don't mean anything either because
Yeah,
there's so many different things that you could take into account. None of them prove anything. And I
yeah,
prefer to look at real life stories. That's what if someone did this and it worked for them, then that works. And if
yeah.
something different worked for someone else, then it works. That's the way I like to look at it.
Exactly. And look, you could hire any researcher, any scientist to say anything. You have money, you can get a science paper that says your thing. You
Yeah.
know, and that doesn't mean that every scientist is corrupt. That doesn't mean that every doctor is corrupt. It doesn't mean every researcher is corrupt. But you have money, you can get your point proved scientifically.
Yeah.
That's just the fact of the matter. And anyone that disagrees with that is just naive at best. You know, it's unfortunate. But
Yeah.
that said, though, our things that we talk about, we are very science backed. We are very science based. And, you know, I'm not someone like you said that has to see sources, cite your sources, right? But as an organization, the things that we talk about have been studied in assorted capacities. And we do have hundreds and hundreds of research papers and, you know, articles and stuff for someone who would want to dive into those things. Yeah, I mean, those are cited all throughout our course, all throughout our blog posts, all throughout our assorted areas where we disseminate information. Our books have, you know, a long list of citations at the end. So again, we're not anti-science,
Yeah.
but as an individual, I recognize that science can't isn't just an end all be all,
Yeah.
you know,
I agree.
and
And yeah.
because a lot of it's following the money, right? When who
Mm,
has the money to fund studies? Large corporations that are trying to sell you stuff
yeah.
versus the OGs practicing ancient things. They don't really have necessarily lots and lots of money and invested interest in creating this whole study. And then they wouldn't even be allowed to in most places in the world. You're not allowed through the official channels to conduct studies on certain things. And so like your medical journals won't publish it anyway, even if you do conduct the study and say and write up the whole thing. You say, oh, I want to publish this. Well, oh, the peers don't agree, the peers won't review it. It's all a big echo chamber, and you it's crazy.
That's
It's
it.
crazy.
No, I agree. Again, like you said, I'm not anti-science, but unfortunately, most of the science nowadays is not real science. Like you say, science should always be questioned. You know,
Yeah,
and anyone who's when they're saying, "Oh, this research paper says this, so that's it, done with." No, that research paper says that, and you take that into account, and then you can look at something else. So I say, I like to understand the science of how things work as well when I look into it, but there's no science that is definitive on any subject. That there's science that can help you form your opinions, and then you see if it works in real life. And I think if it then works in real life, then it's like, okay, that's working. But as you said, it's all about money with the science nowadays, and they try and make things definitive, which really aren't. It should always be open to new ideas, open to being wrong, and to just learning more. Because there's a lot about the human body and mind that we still don't know, don't understand.
yeah, and then even to dive into that, who is the we? Because there's certain
Yeah,
things that certain civilizations or certain people very much know, but the common people don't for whatever reason, and that's why there's a lot that's known about the human body by certain practitioners and certain cultures that Western cultures don't know for the most part, and that's
yeah,
it's like there's things that have been known for years and years and years and centuries that a science article will now come and act like it's a new thing. And then the ancient Indians will be like, oh, well, duh, you know? Yeah. There's a lot of things that are being presented as cutting edge, modern, breaking news science that are just the original ancient knowings
Yeah.
in different capacities.
Exactly. I can't remember if I said it before we started recording when we were chatting or on it, but the stuff that worked in the past still works. Like what works will continue to work forever. You know, if it worked hundreds of years ago, it still works. We should stick to it. You know, and even, you know, jump into a different condition, but you look at something like diabetes, you go back a couple hundred years from like the, you know, the 1800s through to the early 1900s, they knew how to treat diabetes with low carb diets. And then they discovered insulin, and suddenly, you know, from then on, it's high carb diets. And we've suddenly forgot how to treat diabetes, and it's getting terrible. You know, 100 years ago, they knew how to treat it. And we've just covered it up for the sake of money.
Yeah, exactly. It's nonsense. And diabetes has a heavy correlation with cancer, especially because of
Hmm.
the sugar, sugar being a factor in feeding cancer cells, etc. Um, Sugar has no place in the body. There's just
Yeah.
there's no benefit to it. There's only drawbacks. It's poison through and through.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. The you know, there's a small amount of glucose that we need in our body for our brain and in our blood, and we can make that ourselves. That there's no need for us to be taking it in from our diet. So I agree with that. I think sugar's very dangerous to us, and you know, we wouldn't have been taking it in, definitely not in the amounts we are now for the majority of human civilization, and now we're suddenly taking in crazy amounts, and you know, I think it's responsible for a lot of what we're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, not just in a physical ailment, but mentally, it's just horrible. It fries your dopamine receptors. You get such a dopamine rush when you eat sugary things. It's delicious. And I
Yeah,
say that from personal experience. I'm
yeah.
someone who had a sugar addiction. And I'll say that seriously. And I say that it stems from my childhood because, like a lot of people, I was given sugary things as a reward. Oh, finish your dinner, have your dessert. Oh, you did good. Okay, here's some candy. Blah blah blah. And sugar gets really pedestalized, and chemically it's addictive, and it's absolutely delicious. And so, we end up getting emotional and physical addictions to it, and it's a very hard one to break. And you I genuinely do go through sugar withdrawals when you have a severe sugar addiction, and it's a hard thing to break, and
Yeah.
it's an easy thing to relapse on. That's why a lot of people are like, oh, I'll have one cookie, and then the whole box of cookies later, now I don't feel good,
That's it.
But yeah, from personal experience, the less of sugar I consume, the better I've been. And that there's levels to it, right? There's always levels to everything. Because for a long time, I stopped doing any white sugar, any white refined sugar, but you can still go too hard on cane sugar. You could, especially, that one's really not good for you either. You could still go too hard on even the more natural sugars like coconut sugar, date sugar, honey. You could still give yourself too much of that too. So I these days, if I'm looking for something sweet, I'll do something like dates or like sweet fruits and stuff. But there's really no need for it.
No, no, and as you say, food addiction is a real thing, and it's hard for people, and there's a lot of people struggling with it. And you know that these food companies have scientists, and their job is literally to make it as addictive as possible as they can to the human brain, trying to get that right mix of, you know, sugar, fat, and salt, or whatever it is, a certain balance. And you know that it's no wonder people are addicted to it.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. Once your eyes are open, you can't close them because it's and one of the most obscene things is seeing sugar being number one, two, or three on the ingredients list of products it just has no business being in. Look at your ketchup. It's sugar. Look at your mustard. It's probably sugar. Look at your turkey. Look at deli turkey. A lot of it's sugar as the second ingredient. Look at like just everything where you would least expect it. Oh, this doesn't taste sweet. Doesn't mean they don't sneak that sugar in there to addict you.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. It's they put it everywhere for a reason to keep you coming back.
That's it. That's it. And they give it all the different names. So if you read the ingredients, you might not even realize there's sugar in there because, you know, they
Yeah.
hide it in like 46 different names or something like that. And yeah, it's anything with any more than two or three ingredients, you should just be steering clear of. That's the simplest way to do it. Or just eat single ingredient foods. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah, and of course that's an easy thing to say and to enforce, especially for someone that's first looking out. I've realized things are a little more nuanced than that. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad. And the whole thing where it's interesting. People often say, "Oh, if you can't pronounce it, you shouldn't eat it." Right? I've learned semi recently that that might be a little more fear mongering than is necessary. When you see things like you know, again, please don't scientifically quote this, but like things like trisodium phosphate, this, that, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Those have been demonized a lot, especially in the natural like communities recently. But I've realized that those aren't necessarily bad. Perhaps they're synthetic versions of the minerals, but a lot of times that those things added in are maybe essential cell salts or essential minerals or whatever. I don't know. I'm not an expert there. I've barely looked into it, but just something interesting for consideration.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know anything in that realm.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it is there is nuance to everything. Yeah, I think just for people who are struggling and don't know, I think just as minimal ingredients as possible
Yeah,
is kind
yeah,
of a way to make it simple. But yeah, it doesn't because it's got 3 ingredients in doesn't necessarily mean that it's super unhealthy. Like you say, it could have a couple of ingredients that are okay. It's kind of a simplified blanket statement, but doesn't mean it applies to everything.
yeah. These days, I try to. Those are fantastic, and they're fantastic mantras, and they're essential, and they have their place in people learning. It's just I try to defend against all possible attack vectors, right? Because you say something like that, and then someone will hear that and be like, "Oh, well, actually, this and this, and look, this has 5, and it's okay." So that's so I try to
Yeah, yeah,
qualify,
yeah,
not
yeah,
make too hard of claims and things like
yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, I think most products that have any more than 3, you're almost guaranteed one will be sugar or seed oils. I would
Oh
say you're pretty much guaranteed one of them. So most things over 3 you probably would avoid.
yeah, yeah. So it's a good starting point. It's a good starting point.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if people want to, obviously you've said about how people come to contact with you. So if you could give us the website again and where people can find you personally if they want to get in contact with you. You got social medias and things like that. Where can people find you?
Yeah. So the website itself is beatcancer.org. Very simple. Beatcancer.org. That's the organization's website. From there, at the top, if you're looking to get in contact with one of our hundreds of coaches all across the world, you'll click on the Find a Coach tab. And if you want to get in contact with our counselor, you'd scroll down to the bottom and you'll see the directory there. You could also email right at the top. Right at the top, there's support@beatcancer.org. That'll go to our CEO and he'll get you in contact with our counselor if you need, or get you any other resource that you want. The website's always in progress, especially these days. We're working on revamping the website, so things might move around. But you could always get to where you need from there. My personal channels, I'm a little all over the place. I've started a new incentive in the organization because I would like to sell more of our programs and just get it in front of more people in the world. So I've been creating short form, long form content and posting them all over Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all Facebook, everything. And so I've started my own little sub brand of Cancer Coach Central, and I guess we could put the links to those on
Yeah.
the description or whatever. Yeah, so
Yeah, I'll link them all in the description. Yeah.
I'm running social medias under the name of Cancer Coach Central, where we're going to talk about all things holistic health and wellness in relation to cancer or otherwise. And then we're also going to be specifically talking about cancer coaching and what that is and why it's essential and why that might be something that someone wants to go into as a career or side hustle choice, and how to do that. So
Yeah.
beatcancer.org and Cancer Coach Central.
Awesome. That is amazing. We'll link everything in the description so people can find you easily if they want to. And I encourage people to educate themselves. That's always good to do. And but before you go, I just wanted to ask, could you kind of pick out one or even two really good success stories that you guys have had, like really great stories of people who've come and have really had an amazing result from their cancer?
That's a difficult one, right? For a lot of reasons. One, because I myself, I'm not a coach and I don't work specifically one-on-one with
Oh,
people, so I don't necessarily know the one-on-one nuances of some stories. But I touched upon the one with the CEO, and
mm,
ultimately working with our counselor, she was able to figure out the lifestyle changes she needed to not have her cancer come back. But to talk about one, and not a lot of our coaches don't necessarily give the ins and outs of their patients' lives because that is also confidential information. So I don't know, man. That's a hard thing, right? Because there's hundreds of testimonials, but I don't necessarily know one special one, right?
yeah. No, that's fine. And to be honest,
Sorry, it's a little
the
anticlimactic of an answer, but
that's fine. I mean, the one you spoke about is pretty amazing. That it was literally that she had to quit her job. And she would never have got to that point and realized that without working with a coach, with the counselor. So that's a pretty powerful one of how it pays to have someone, an expert, helping you, and how it can be different things causing the cancer. Don't rule anything out.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then, I could give some of my own personal experience, not necessarily in this capacity, but just on the realm of holistic health in general. I have dogs, right? I love dogs. And I adopted two dogs right up off the streets. Right off, I was living in Puerto Rico. There's a lot of street dogs out there. They're just running around like basically squirrels or deer, like you'd see in Western locations. Um, and so I adopted two of them, and one was a bit older, and so he had assorted health problems, including some like bumps. And I'll keep it short, but basically he had this one cancerous looking bump on him, on his rear end, and we went to a vet ultimately because I do most of their veterinary work, but we consulted with a professional for this, and she said, I don't know. You could cut his, genitals off about it and neuter him, and then maybe that'll help. Okay, well, I don't want to do that. That's a whole other conversation. But they ultimately said, yeah, I don't know. There's nothing you can do. And we're like, okay, we're not satisfied. So we did research, and we found this substance that gets shipped out of Ecuador because the guy who created it for use on people or animals, all the same, on cancerous growths and cancerous bumps, he ended up getting, we'll say, chased out of the United States under threat from assorted entities. And he went overseas and keeps selling this stuff. And it's just a plant salve. It's a plant-based salve that is very simple and very powerful and very potent. And we used that and treated our animal. And in like a week, that bump was just bam off. Meanwhile, the vets had no idea what to do. Like that simple. It's that simple, guys, and the answers are out there. And then I don't know. It was a bit of a tangential experience, but it came to mind, and it just goes to show that there's more out there than doctors might know, and there's more out there than doctors might tell you. Doesn't mean they're bad people. They're working with what they know, but we got to be on our own advocates. We got to be our own advocates, and sometimes you got to be your own expert.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great story. It lines up perfectly, and as you say, it perfectly illustrates the point. As you said, doctors only know what they're taught, and they're taught, mainstream medicine, and there's a lot outside that, and they're not taught that. They only know what they know, and we need to, as you say, we always encourage people to take responsibility for your own health. The health system is not actually there for your health. The health system is a business. It's there to make money. We have to take responsibility for our health ourselves, and I think encouraging people to do that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it doesn't mean that everyone that's in the mainstream health systems is bad. Quite contrarily, many of them have the best of intentions. Many of them want the best for the people that they know and the people that they treat. Many of them even are interested in the holistic remedies. They just are bound to not go into them at a professional level. So I don't want to demonize anyone particularly, especially an entire industry worth of people that might have good intentions, right? But unfortunately, the system is broken in a lot of forms, or maybe it was designed and is functioning exactly as it was initially intended. Perhaps it's
Yeah.
not broken. Perhaps it's perfectly functioning as it was intended. I don't know. Um, you just got to watch your own back. That's personal accountability, personal responsibility, and taking control of your life is always a good idea.
Absolutely. I think that's brilliant advice to leave everyone with. Thank you so much for giving up your time and sharing you don't have to call yourself an expert, but I'll say sharing your expertise with us and giving us your time. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, my friend.
No problem at all. Thank you very much. We will see everyone again next week. We will have another episode. So look after yourselves till then. Keep learning and let's get optimal together. Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into the show. I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover on the podcast or you'd like to appear on it, then please contact us at hwpoduk@gmail.com, on our website, which is healthwealthuk.com, or on any of our social medias, which are at hwpoduk. Please make sure you like, subscribe, share it with all your friends and family, and we will see you next week.